honor to have people following me around to all of the finest Waffle Houses that Ohio has to offer. I am just so happy to be here. I'd like to thank the Libertarian Party of Ohio again for helping put all this together. And of course, I want to help you guys for being a part of this. Give yourselves a round of applause. Hi. Now that everyone is finally here, guys, we're all here for the same reason. We know that we have to be free. We know that we're never going to fix the problems that we're facing until we're free. These problems are not because of anything we did wrong. These problems are not because of individual politicians or individual political parties, and they're not going to be solved by individual politicians or individual political parties. These problems were created by people who had bad ideas that have been put in motion and kept in motion by the idea that we should be ruled over. And it's only going to be ended by people who recognize that we should not be ruled over. That aggression and theft and ordering people around and subjugating people and robbing people doesn't work. And that the way that we fix this and fix the problems that we are facing is dismantling these bad systems. They have been robbing you of your power and your freedom and your money for decades. They have been robbing you in every single aspect of your life since before you were even born. Let's be very clear about something. You were robbed before you were born. Decades before you were born, debt was being run up that they knew that you would have to pay off with interest once you were alive. So this robbery started before you, and if we don't do something, it will continue after you. We do best when we are free. That is what libertarians believe. That's what I believe. That's what Joe believes. That's what Kevin Cohen believes, who's running for Congress. That's what Michael Frick believes, who's running for Congress. That's what Oscar Herrera believes, who's running for State House. That's what Tim Yao, he's not in Ohio, but we can still like him because he's still a libertarian. That's what Tim Yao is running for in Michigan in the state senate.
State rep. Yeah.
State rep in Michigan. That's what, who are we playing? Stewart.
John Stewart.
Oh, John Stewart. That's what John Stewart recognizes running for Congress. That's what libertarians running up and down the ballot across this country recognize. You know who else recognizes that? A lady I've come to really know and love. Cassandra Fryman,
Yes.
the mayor of Plymouth, Ohio.
Yes.
I probably don't have to tell you what Cassandra has done, what Mayor Fryman has done in a very short period of time. But for those who are watching this through the live streams, I'll go ahead and tell you in case you don't know. This is one person who has been, that's my theme song. There is one person, this is one person in one position in a local office. Do you know what she's done? Here's two things she's done. Number one, she decriminalized cannabis in her city. Here's something else that she recently did. She vacated all of the speeding tickets. She went in. Her role as mayor, for some odd reason in her city, she actually is in charge of issuing the fines for the tickets as well. She has the authority to make the decision on that. She looked at the tickets. She said, "These are all ridiculous. I'm not going to ruin people's lives financially over them going a few miles over the speed limit." So she got rid of them. People's lives, who in that moment would have been made a lot worse by having to pay off hundreds of dollars for trying to get to work probably. Instead, they didn't have to face that. That is a perfect example of what happens when just one libertarian gets elected. And of course, we have about 250 libertarians elected across the country. We want those numbers to go up. We want the number of people who are in office making people's lives better and reducing and ending the harm that they are facing as a direct result of the bureaucracy and the excesses and the abuses and the bloat and the theft and the cronyism that's in government. We want more people in office to be able to get rid of that kind of stuff. That's why we're voting Libertarian. That's why we're voting for Joe Jorgensen. That is why we are voting for Michael. That's why we're running for John. That's why we're running for Oscar. That's why we're voting for Tim. That's why we're voting for Kevin. That's why we're voting for libertarians across this country and in this state right here. Because we recognize that we're never going to fix this problem until we kick the bums and the cronies and the bureaucrats out of office and put the power back in the hands of the people where it always belongs. Who here wants to end this system? Yeah. Who here wants to end the cronyism and the theft?
Yeah.
Who here is sick of living in the worst recession of our lives while at the same time stock prices are at and above all-time highs? Who's ready to end the war on drugs? Who's ready to end the wars overseas? Who here is ready to end police brutality in the militarized police state? Who here is ready to set millions of Americans free from the cages from being victims of the wars on victimless crimes? That's what we're running for. We aren't just running to be a lesser of three evils instead of two. We aren't just running to be another set of politicians or another political party to vote for. We're running for real change, for real everyday Americans like you and people across the country. We're running to end the Fed and to end the IRS and to end the ATF and to end the DEA and to end the Department of Homeland Security and to end the war on drugs, the war on victimless crimes, the war on guns, the wars overseas. We're running to end it all and to put that power back in your hands. And you can help. We need your help at the grassroots level. If you've not already done so, I ask you to join the Libertarian Party today. The Libertarian Party, during this unprecedented series of crises that we live in, the Libertarian Party was the only party to be able to get on the ballot in all 50 states plus DC during a pandemic.
Woo!
That's right. We were the only ones to be able to show that we are effectively able to fight back against the Republicrats at a time when they are trying to take more from you than they ever have before. Let's be very clear. They are not satisfied with the amount of control of your lives they have right now. They are not satisfied with how much they've robbed you and how much they plan to rob you in the future. They aren't satisfied with the amount of control that the cronies that bought and paid for them to be in office have. They aren't satisfied with how much they've driven up the cost of living. They aren't satisfied with how reliant they've made you on them. They aren't satisfied with how anxious and desperate you've become. They aren't satisfied until you're utterly hopeless and your spirit is broken. Because if they can break your spirit and make you hopeless, it's that much easier to convince you that everything will be fine if you just give them the rest of the control. If you just let them take control of every other aspect of your lives. Well, folks, we know. The reason we're here today is because we know that the last people that we can trust to get us out of this mess are the very people who put us in it. That is why we are libertarians, and that is why we ask you to join us today. Now let's go win this thing. Oh, and I forgot. After you finish joining the Libertarian Party, join the Libertarian Party of Ohio.
Yes.
Join your local affiliates. If your local area does not have an affiliate, talk with LP Ohio about starting your own affiliate. They will give you the resources and everything that you need to be able to do that. This is where it starts. This is where the grassroots army for human liberty starts. This is where our fight to set America and the people free starts. When we accomplish what we want, when we look at history, look at every single time that there's been a major historical social change for good in this country or any other, it started with small, scrappy groups of people who had had enough, who didn't care that they were outnumbered, who didn't care that they were outgunned. They said enough is enough, and if we have to be the ones to start it, then we will be the ones to start it. When this party and this movement accomplishes what we want, when we have dismantled this corporate kleptocracy that we live under, when we end these wars overseas, when we free people from cages, when we set this country free and make us freer and safer and happier and healthier than we've ever been before, when everyday Americans are able to thrive and prosper in ways that aren't even possible right now, it will be because of you, and you will be the ones who are remembered as the trailblazers, the brave few who stood forward and said, I don't care if I'm outnumbered, I am sick of this, we're taking the power back. Now let's join this together and let's go win this thing. And with that, I would be happy to take selfies, autographs, anything else you want, I would be happy to do. And also, we have merch. Merch. As always, selfies are free. Me signing stuff you brought, guns, maybe? I don't know. That's also free. Well, we also brought stuff that you can have and some of it signed as well. So the first thing we have is we have one of these. This has stuff in it already, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to do it from this.
Okay, that's probably.
Yeah, that's project. So we've got many things. First of all, You probably already know this, but in case you don't, before I was the vice presidential candidate of the Libertarian Party, I was very briefly a swimsuit model. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We, as what started as a joke that went too far, which is true of a lot of things I've done, we made the Libertarian Dad Bod calendar. The idea was to try to raise a few $100 for local South and North Carolina down ballot candidates. We have raised tens of thousands of dollars for libertarians across the country, including thousands of dollars for the Jorgensen-Cohen campaign. And you can have your very own signed Libertarian Dad Bod calendar. I'll even put your name here, so it's autographed, personalized for you for the low price of $20 donation to the campaign. If you want to have, thank you. There's like 7 of them on there. If you want to have something you can show normal people, I have this portrait that I will sign and autograph for you personally. These are also only $20. Buttons. You're not a libertarian if you don't like buttons. And libertarians love buttons like buttons love libertarians. And of course, this is the Waffle House tour. And so if you want to be an official member of the Libertarian Party Waffle House Caucus, we have these large buttons for $10. We have these tiny buttons for $5. They're not tiny, they're just not large. These not large buttons for $5. We have these brand new, hot off the presses, just got them yesterday. You're one of the first like 20, 30 people to get these. You are the power buttons. You can have these are only $5, or you can have this fantastic You Are the Power Spike Cohen Waffle House colored bracelet. It's actually Libertarian colored bracelet for only $5, or you can have all of these things together, a $65 value for the low price of a $50 donation to the campaign. We accept cash, or you can make a donation to the campaign online and show me the confirmation that you paid it, and that will be fine as well. For anyone who wants these, I would be happy to do it. I also will be happy to answer your questions right now, also for free. I will take the first, let's say, 3 questions, and then from there we'll do selfies and autographs and all that fun stuff. If anyone wants any merch, I'd be happy to do it. Question?
Does the tiny button have a great personality?
Yes. Great personality. It's the kind of button that you can take home to show your parents. That doesn't count as a question. Thank you. I mean, it is a question, but in case anyone had serious questions. I mean, actually, I guess that is a serious question. Any other questions? I know a lot of you already came for that. Ryan, question for Ryan.
So we've seen in the last few days the ATF taking upon their own regulatory control and reinterpreting their own rules. They didn't, write new regulations. They essentially said, our rules already say this. Here's how we're going to enforce it. How would a libertarian executive control these regulatory alphabet agencies that have basically unlimited impunity to interpret the rules and enforce them as they see fit?
Well, there are many things that can be done there, Ryan. One example of things that can be done with the ATF is to fire everyone in it and not hire anyone to replace them. And the president, we know that and there are multiple, there's all sorts of case law precedent on this, if anyone wants to fight us on it. Everyone that is in the executive branch of the federal government of the United States serves at the pleasure of the president. Now, there are certain government workers that are protected against being fired, but that ain't ATF agents. That ain't or at least it's not the ATF leadership. And if there's no leadership and there's no regulations for them to enforce, they're basically just sitting there. Yeah, they're collecting a paycheck for nothing, but that's better than what they're doing right now. Any regulations, any executive orders, all of those things exist or do not exist based on what the president at the time wants or does not want. That is why it is important to run for president, even though when we get into office, we will more than likely be facing a Republican supermajority that will fight us tooth and nail. That is fine. We will undo things at the executive level, like, for example, these ridiculous gun laws, or actually gun regulations. They're not laws because Congress didn't pass them. Get rid of these regulations and defang entire agencies and fire a bunch of people. And when the American people experience the immediate and profound benefits that come from having those regulations removed from their lives and them being more free and able to thrive as a result, we'll be able to take that political goodwill to Congress and say, now, who wants to do this at the legislative level? Who wants to work with us to remove the boot from the neck of the people so that they can thrive? Or who wants to remain on the side of keeping that boot on the neck of the people and allowing continued needless suffering for no other reason than to preserve your own power and influence? And undoubtedly, most of them are going to continue to fight to keep the boot on the neck of the people. It'll be that much easier to get rid of them. That is why we are running. Not just to help down ballot candidates, not just to try to get in the White House to try to prove that point, but also because when we get into the White House, we can make solid changes at the executive level. It can be undone if and when we're replaced by a non-libertarian, but we can show that it works. We can show for that 4 years, 8 years, however long libertarians are in there, that freedom works, and we can do it at the executive level, and then hopefully be able to get enough libertarians in Congress to be able to show that it works, to be able to make these things permanent by actually getting rid of these agencies at the legislative level. But there's a lot we can do at the executive level even before that.
What are the 3 most pressing issues you think that local and state governments are facing across the country?
Wow, that local and state governments are facing, I think number one is solvency. So many of the governments are right now at a point where they're basically facing bankruptcy, and they have driven up, they've robbed so much from the people in property taxes and sales taxes and income taxes and various fees and licensing fees and schemes and everything else. It's not like there's a bunch of revenue they can steal from. They try to, but ultimately all they do is they end up cutting off their revenue stream by causing more and more businesses to either go out of business or go somewhere else. So I think that's a big problem. I think another huge problem is that the state policing model clearly has failed. We need to have community policing, and it's leading to the unrest that we're seeing. Instead of having the government impose a state system of policing that tells communities what their police look like and what their first response looks like, it needs to be taken where the communities themselves decide that. And the same thing needs to happen in education as well. Education we don't just need to get the federal government out of education, we need to get the state governments out of education. Let the individual communities and school districts and teachers and parents decide for themselves what schooling needs to look like for the children in that area. That's the best way to do it. And then I think I'd stopped counting. I think the last thing is, and this is kind of a federal thing too, but healthcare costs are also driving up the pension costs because they're having to pay for the legacy healthcare costs. And we know that 75% of the healthcare costs is just the bureaucracy and red tape that government has put in place. Get rid of that, you knock it down to a quarter right there. Then you get rid of the patent protections for big pharma, for these drugs that have been around for decades, sometimes over a century. Then you get rid of things like certificate of need laws that allow hospitals to be able to force their smaller competitors from not being able to open. These are the kind of things that libertarians can do at the federal level and at the state level as well. And I think that just off the top of my head, those are probably the most pressing things that are facing the individual state governments. I guess the last thing would be just the corruption that's in government. And the way you solve that is stop giving government so much power. People tend to be corrupt when they have power. The less power they have, the less corrupt that they can get, and the less it matters how corrupt they are in the first place. They can't control your life. Thank you. I think those were two, not counting Jimmy's questions, so we'll go.
I've seen this as somewhat of a joke and somewhat serious on the internet across various platforms that Joe and yourself would use the executive pen to pretty much undo a lot of the issues that we have, and then at the end of that would use the executive pen to get rid of the executive pen. So that when new presidents came in, they wouldn't be able to just, with the stroke of a pen, be able to do it again. How much seriousness is there to the idea of getting rid of a lot of that power?
No backsies, no takebacks?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that's a thing. That's where the legislature comes in. It's the legislature that abdicated their authority to the White House in the first place. And that would be what our appeal would be in that, is we would say, listen, we did what we can, this can all be undone. So if you like what's going on here, pressure Congress to make these changes permanent, or at least to legislate them into law so that it's not just as easy, because literally, as quickly as we can undo all of that, you can have someone come in and go, take backsies, and then it all goes back. I mean, they wouldn't just say backsies, but they could literally just copy and paste everything that we just deleted and put it back and say, we're reordering all this stuff and more, and putting even more stuff in place. So the answer is that, obviously a lot of this stuff, so no, that specific thing though, we can't pass an executive order banning all executive orders or something like that, because it does have to pass constitutional muster. Here's what it would come down to. And there is some usefulness to an executive order. The purpose of an executive order is to provide clarification and a sense of, from the White House, what they think, how they are interpreting legislation. And then it's up to the Supreme Court to decide if that's constitutional, and it's up to the Congress to decide if that's what they meant. And if it's not, then they pass something else clarifying it. That's supposed to be what it is. At some point, executive orders just became an end run around the legislative process. And as the legislature, as Congress, continued to grant more and more authority to these regulatory agencies, that's what happened. It just became the new way to create laws. Donald Trump just created a state unemployment program with an executive order. And Congress isn't challenging it, and I doubt the Supreme Court will challenge it either. This is what happens when you give the White House way too much authority. That has to be done at that legislative level. So, thank you. So with that, I will be happy to take any photos anyone wants, any selfies, any autographs, anything like that. I think we'll probably, is this okay if I move this over a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
That way
Move
this
it
will
wherever
be-
you need to.
Yeah, we'll move it